Hello students, in this video we are going to start history chapter number 9, the making of the national movement 1870s to 1947. You all would be aware of how our freedom fighters and people they fought a lot to get independence, and finally on 15 August 1947 India became an independent nation. So, what happened? What was the whole movement about? What were the things which happened? And whenever you talk about national movement, there are certain people, certain freedom fighters whose names automatically arise in your minds. For example, Mahatma Gandhi, Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Lala Lajpat Rai, all these people played a very important part or role in this national movement. So, in the previous chapters, we have looked at first the British conquest of territories and taking over the kingdoms, introduction of new laws and administrative institutions, changes in the lives of the peasants and tribals, educational changes in the 19th century, debates regarding the condition of women, challenges to the caste system, social and religious reform, the revolt of 1857 and its aftermath, the decline of crafts and growth of industries. So, all these things we have studied in the previous chapters, if you remember. On the basis of what you read about these issues, do you think Indians were discontented? Discontented means dissatisfied with the British rule. Of course, they were. Nobody was happy with the British rule. If so, how were different groups and classes dissatisfied? So, we have talked about certain people like tribals, peasants, workers, how they were not happy with the policies of the British. Okay, now you can see here this is the picture of police tear gas on the this tear gas was launched on the demonstrators during the Quit India movement. Quit India movement means Bharat Chodo Andolan. Okay, let us come to the topic now. The emergence of the nationalism. So, what happened with the course of time was that the people in India they started asking question: Who are we? Where do we belong to? What is this country of India? And for whom is this country? So, the answer that gradually emerged was that India was the people of India. So, basically, India is what people. People of India make India. All the people, irrespective of class, color, caste, creed, language, or gender. And the country, its resources and systems were all meant for the people of India, not the Britishers. As this answer emerged, people became aware that Britishers are exercising control over the resources of India and the lives of the people. And until this control was ended, India could not be for Indians. So, with time, this type of awareness grew among people that this is our country, ये हमारा देश है, ये हमारे लिए है, this is for us. We cannot allow somebody else, coming from Europe and controlling us. Nobody can control us. This is our country. Now, this type of consciousness or this theory that our country is our started to be, clearly talked and, started to be discussed among people in political associations, especially after 1850s. And uh, and especially those that came into being in the 1870s and 1880s. Now, most of these associations, political associations or parties, were led by English educated professionals such as lawyers. The most important ones are the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, the Indian Association, the Madras Mahajan Sabha, Bombay Presidency Association, and of course the Indian National Congress. So, Indian National Congress is still present today. Okay, so Indian National Congress is such an old party. Now, the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, the literal meaning Sarvajanik means for everybody. Sarvajnik for all the people. Though many of these associations functioned in specific parts of the country, their goals were stated as the goals of all the people of the India and not just for any particular region or community or class. So basically, their agendas or their goals were for the whole country. They worked with the idea that people should be the sovereign. So, people should be the sovereign leaders of the nation. Sovereign means the greatest. Nobody should come above the people. The people, the power of the people is the greatest one. Now, what is the meaning of sovereign? The capacity to act independently without outside interference. So basically, you're acting. If you are a sovereign, you are independent, and nobody can control you. Now, becoming a sovereign or becoming independent or out of control from somebody became a very important part of this nationalist movement. Now, in other words, they believed that Indian people should be empowered to take decisions regarding their own affairs. So basically, the decision making of our country, India, should be in the hands of the people of India itself, not the Britishers. So please remember this. Now, during the 1870s and 1880s, people were very dissatisfied with the British rule. For example, the Arms Act, passed in 1878, did not allow the Indians to possess arms. In the same year, the Vernacular Press Act was also enacted. It was the act which silenced, especially, did not give the right to the people who were critical of the government. With the help of this Vernacular Press Act, the British government could control the press. Whatever was said, whatever was जो भी चीज़ें छप रही थी अखबार में, उस सब चीज़ों को वो कंट्रोल कर सकते थे. The act allowed the government to confiscate the assets of newspapers, including their printing presses, if the newspapers published anything that was found objectionable. In 1883, there was a furor over the attempt by the government to introduce the Ilbert Bill. Now, what was Ilbert Bill? The bill provided for the trial of British or European persons by Indians and sought equality between British and Indian judges in the country. So, this was a good bill, but when white opposition forced the government to withdraw the bill, Indians were enraged. So, according to Ilbert Bill, it gave certain type of equality among the Indian judges and the British judges. But of course, this could not pass. This bill was not passed. So people were very angry with this. The event highlighted the racial attitudes of the British in India. And of course, Britishers were very racist. They obviously thought that Indians were no way equal to them. They always thought of themselves being superior to the Indians. Now, the need for an all India organization of educated Indians had been felt since 1880s, but the Ilbert Bill controversy deepened this desire. The Indian National Congress is very important was established when 72 delegates from all over the country met at Bombay in December 1885. So basically, Indian National Congress was formed in 1885. The early leadership or the early leaders of the Congress were Dadabhai Naroji, Firoz Shah Mehta, Badruddin Tayabji, W.C. Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, Romesh Chandra Dutt, Subramanya Iyer, and etc. And these were educated people, and they were largely from Bombay and Calcutta. Most of these people were very good, very well educated, and English educated, and most of them were lawyers by profession. Now, Dada Bhai Naroji, a businessman and publicist, settled in London for a time, member of the British Parliament. He was also the part of British Parliament. Please remember this. Guided the younger nationalists. A retired British official, A.O. Hume, also played a part in bringing Indians from various regions together. So, Dadabhai Naroji and A.O. Hume, who was a British himself, played a very important part in formation of Indian National Congress. In fact, Dadabhai Naroji, you can look in this picture. This is a picture of Dadabhai Naroji's book, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, offered a scathing criticism of the economic impact of British rule. So basically, he was the person, was a very brave person. In fact, he went to the British Parliament and read a paper from his book and openly criticized the British government for exploiting the resources of India and leading India to sheer and utter poverty. So he was very important leader. Now, a nation in the making. It has often been said that the Congress in the first 20 years was moderate in its objectives and methods. During this period, it demanded a greater voice for the Indians in the government and in the administration. It wanted legislative councils to be made more representative, given more power, and introduced in the provinces where none existed. It demanded that Indians be placed in higher positions in the government. For this purpose, it called for civil service examinations to be held in India, not just in London. So basically, what used to happen was during that time, the civil service exam, the UPSC, today's UPSC exam, was held in London, and because of which a lot of Indians who were very highly intelligent and educated, they could not give this exam. So they demanded that it should be held in India and not in London. Now, the demand for Indianization of the administration was a part of the movement against racism. Now, Indianization means more Indians should be included in the administration. There should be जो bureaucrats होते हैं, for example, district administrator, DM, SDM, people who work in consulates and all, ये क्या होने चाहिए according to them? They should be Indians only. So, this was a movement against racism since most important jobs at that time were monopolized by white officials. So basically, all the important posts were captured by the white people, Britishers only, and the British generally assumed that Indians could not be given positions of responsibility since, of course, this was against the racist ideology of the British, since they thought of themselves as being superior to the Indians. They obviously thought that Indians are not intelligent enough, okay, they are not strong enough, and they should not be given any position of responsibility. They assume that Indians cannot take up responsibility. Since British officials were sending a major part of their large salaries home, Indianization, it was hoped, could also reduce the drain of wealth to England. So basically, what was happening was that all these people, all the officers, whatever salary they were, getting, they were sending it back to England. So हमारा जो पैसा था इंडिया का, वो सारा इंग्लैंड जा रहा था. So because of this Indianization, what will happen was the drain of wealth. Drain of wealth means when the wealth of particular place is going away to some other place, it's called drain of wealth. So it will be stopped if all the important positions will be filled by the Indians only. तो हमारे देश का पैसा हमारे देश में ही जाएगा. Other demands included the separation of judiciary from the executive, the repeal of the Arms Act, and the freedom of speech and expression. So basically, these are the basic fundamental rights. They were asking for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. They were asking them to separate judiciary from the executive. जैसे आज है, now like in the present we have, Our judiciary is a completely independent body, so that but during that time it was not. You know, the executive or the ministers, they had control over judiciary, so they were asking that the justice system should be independent. Another very important issue was that Another important issue was the economic issue. So Congress said that the British rule has led India to poverty and famines. Increase because of the increase in land revenue has impoverished the zamindars and the peasants. An export of grains to Europe has created food shortage. The Congress demanded reduction of revenue, cut in military expenditure, and more funds for irrigation. It passed many resolutions on the salt tax, treatment of Indian laborers abroad, and the sufferings of the dwellers. Forest dwellers mean people who are living in the forests, caused by an interfering forest administration. Now, all this tells us that despite being a body of educated elite, the Congress did not talk only on the behalf of professional groups, zamindars, or industrialists. Now, the Congress soon became the voice of the nation. They started raising questions. The moderate leaders wanted to develop public awareness about the unjust nature of the British rule. They wanted even the common people to know, to understand how British rule is so unjust. They published newspapers, wrote articles, and showed how British rule was leading to the economic ruin of the country. They criticized British rule in their speeches and sent representatives to different parts of the country to mobilize public opinion. They felt that the British had respect for the ideals of freedom and justice, and so they would accept the just demands of the Indians. What was necessary, therefore, was to express these demands and make the government aware of the feelings of the Indians. Now, see, why are we calling them moderate? Moderate means not very strict. So, basically, these people, the moderate leaders of the Congress, what they were saying? They were raising questions, no doubt, they were giving the voice to all these people of India who were suffering. But the thing is, they were into this, mindset that the British government will give them all these things if they demand. And so they were not actually demanding these things very strictly. Their demands were there, the in the manner in which they were raising these demands was very moderate. बहुत ही ज़्यादा सख्ताई से, बहुत ही ज़ोर शोर से ये लोग ये डिमांड्स नहीं दे रहे थे. दैट इज़ वाई इनको हम मॉडरेट बोलते हैं.